Alrighty then, welcome back to another exciting tournament report. I know, I hope you're as excited as I am. So this was last week, I think we are in April 2019. This was a tournament report at Worcester Wargames, the Forge Wardens Tournament, run by my buddies at the Celestial Forge. So it was a one-day, 3-game tournament. The first tournament they'd organised, which was pretty good, and we played 2,000 points. And this is my battle reports. So this will be, it's not with all the arrows and shit because there's just too many pictures. But I'll try and I'll paint a picture. I'll paint a story with words. Anyway, and use this rather incompetent mouse pointer to try and gesture to what I'm talking about. So. To this tournament, I took Twilight Kin, which is basically because I came back from the last tournament. We were talking about the fact that everyone always says my elves look like Twilight Kin because they're purple, and I was like, maybe I can make a list using the models that I've got of Twilight Kin, and I tried that. It didn't really work. And then someone said, hey, you could add this and the other, and I had to buy a bunch of models and paint them. Anyway, so this is my list. So it's a lot of doubles. So 2 troops of Gargoyles. 1 Horde of Scarecrows, that's the ones. So Gargoyles, best chaff in the game, speed 10, flying. Only an 8-10, but doesn't really matter. Regen 3+. Horde of Scarecrows is fantastic, it's stealthy, it's a dash 21. Shambling, but doesn't matter. It's basically they just hold tokens, because nothing else can really hold tokens and be effective. 2 Regiments of Dark Knights. I did have, because when I played Nick Williams in the last tournament, shout out Nick Williams, he had 2 of the Brotherhood Knight units, and he had 1 with Brew of Strength, 1 with Brew of Sharpness, which freaking rules as a pairing. And I was using these, but the points didn't quite work out, so I was running one of these regiments with the Fury, whatever that one is, Chant of Hate. And I switched it to Pipes of Terror, and then promptly that unit just gets wavered constantly, which is irony for you. So there you go, Brew of Strength on 1, Pipes of Terror on the other. 2 Hordes of Chariots. These are the Kin Chariots that are speed 7 now, but still 18 attacks with Vicious. And I've given one of them Blessing of the Gods for Elite. So that particular Chariot Horde is Elite and Vicious, which makes it rather good. We've got 2 Dragons, and we've got a High Priestess with a Bane Chant and the Inspiring Talisman to add to her Fireball 10. We finish up with an ASB with the Banner of the Griffin that I basically just stick behind the Scarecrows to up them to a dash 22. So the idea of the list is that the Scarecrows just is a token hogger. So I put them on tokens or put them onto objectives, and they're very hard to shift. Once you actually get into melee with them, they're only defense 3 and they're pretty terrible. But people don't tend to because they're too busy trying to deal with the mobile units. So the ASB tends to stick. Oh yeah, he sticks. I said that already. He sticks with the Scarecrows, and then I put the Priestess usually with the Chariots. They do some shooting. They can do some melee, and on the other side, I tend to have the Dark Knights. Either that, or I do 1 Chariot, 1 Dark Knight, and I put them on either side. And then the dragons fly around and are generally irritating. I tend to put a Gargoyle behind the Scarecrows, and then one near the Chariots, or the alternative is I run it up with a dragon behind it so that the dragon is unchargeable. So that's my list. Let's see. Oh, actually, let me see. What I'll do is I'll show you some pictures of the army first, because I'm quite proud of the army. It looks all right now, actually, so it works out quite well. So this is my army left to right. So over here we've got the dragon, obviously, looking quite dragon-like. That's actually the Dark Elf Black Dragon from GW, which is ridiculously cheap, but I painted it like an elf dragon because it was an elf dragon. Here's some Gargoyles. I'll show you them a bit closer up later because I'm quite proud of them. These are some converted... they are Stormwind, aren't they? But they're playing Dark Knights today with a lovely purple. There's the ASB. You'll notice originally he's got a bit of fire on his hand because it did happen with a diadem back in the day. And I modelled it and it looks quite cool. But anyway, he's Banner of the Griffin. Here is 1 set of Chariots. Little pop fact about these Chariots is that obviously you buy a regiment of 3 Chariots from Mantic. And I did want to buy another regiment just to have a Horde, because you need 4 for minimum model count or whatever. So this one is entirely made from green stuff. And the only really reason you can tell is because these the poles here aren't very smooth. But apart from that, it is an entirely green stuff Chariot, which I'm quite proud of. These are the Scarecrows. This is a really hasty job. They're really not finished. It's basically just a wash and then some bits added, and I did this kind of cornfield for them to be striding out of. What I'd really like to do is all the tentacly bits, like these tentacles here, I'd like to have kind of a pinky flesh colour blending into this kind of this Nicolax Oxide green, if I can ever be bothered, which is, yeah, maybe. Back here, right, this is supposed to be a High Priestess of the Abyss, for which I was using the Green Lady because I like irony. But the night before, I took her out and went, oh, I don't need a Green Lady because I'm not playing Elves, forgetting the fact I had a Sorceress, so I borrowed a Goblin off a friend. So for this entire tournament report, this Goblin is a High Priestess. Yeah. And then the other side, so here's the other... Oh, these ones at the front of the Dark Knights. These ones are actually GW ones, as you can see, but I'd converted them previously to be Silver Breeze. So they've all got bows, which is a bit weird. Anyway, they're now on a Cavalry, on a Regiment base, and they are more Dark Knights. Back here are some Chariots. You can't quite see in this picture, but they're all GW Chariots. At some point, I'll take this middle one out here and make it a Prince on a Chariot, if I can be bothered. And you may be thinking, hang on, that's not a dragon, it's a griffin. Well, you're wrong. It's very clearly and very obviously a dragon. Stop poking your nose into things you don't understand. Anyway, that's my other dragon. And here's the other gargoyles. And just because I did them in 2 days and I was really quite proud of how they turned out, these are my gargoyles. They look pretty cool, right? I was really pleased with this. I found some old scenery in a box and stuck it on a troop base. I think they look wicked. Got a couple of imps there to fill in for a bit of model count. Yeah, I love it. So they look good. And there's the other ones. Not bad for 2 days, right? Yeah, yeah, not bad. Anyway, right, so on to game one. Game one was versus Empire of Dust. So this was a chap called Mark. Mark's actually, he's mainly a bolt action player. He's a tournament bolt action player, and he plays Kings of War for fun. And we discovered something funny about his list, which I'll show you in a bit. So he's a really nice guy, and his models were really, really nicely painted. I would say lovely, lovely models. So let's have a look at his list. So this is his Empire of Dust list. Bam! So he starts with a horde of spearmen with the Brewer Strength. And then he's got a Regiment of Revenants with the Sanguinary Scripture to give them Life Leech 2. He's got a Regiment of Archers, which were pretty rubbish, because Skeleton Archers are terrible. And of course, he's got 2 regiments, Mummies and a Cursed High Priest, and the Mummy's Revenge, giving them Elite and Vicious, which is absolutely dreadful to face. Awful. So he'd mounted his Priest, giving him Fireball and Weakness. Alright. He's got a Regiment of Scavengers, which is a bit like Gargoyles, to be honest. He's got Pharaoh on a Chariot, to whom he gave the Mournful Blade, which is pretty useless against me, because I've not got any individuals. He's got a Regiment of Cavalry, which I've forgotten to write the word Regiment here, apologies. In fact, I've forgotten to write the word Horde as well. No, Regiment. Regiment of Cavalry, to which he'd given Elite. A Regiment of Chariots, so just 3 Chariots, and a Blade of Slashing. He's got a Soul Snare, which is the ludicrously overpowered Life Leech 10, or Soul Drain 10. War Engine, a Reanimated Behemoth, and a unit of the Restless Souls of the which is a regiment of the dudes with the fire barrels. So they only do 8 attacks, but in melee and shooting they've got Blast D3. So looking at this, yeah, it's okay. It's got some strength. It's got some weak. The Soul Snare's good. I think the Behemoth is weak compared to like a Bone Dragon or a Bone Giant, but there you go. I don't see why he needed the Skeleton Archers. The Mummies are obviously brilliant. Everyone has them. The Pharaoh on a Chariot's pretty great. The rest of the Souls of the Riot, awesome. Soul Snare, incredible. I suppose you're probably looking at this thinking that's quite a lot of units for 2,000 points. It's a lot of items. Yeah, that's because let's just say there was an error in the maths, and it's actually not 2,000 points. It's 2,080 points, which I only realised when I was doing this battle report trying to work out his list. There you go. Mistakes happen. It wasn't spotted. It's fine. We'll move on. So that was his list. So this was the board we were playing on. So quite nice that all the boards are themed. This was a swamp-themed board. It was a necromancer who had taken over and turned everyone to zombies or something. Anyway, but so all the buildings are ruined. There's swamp, and it's kind of a swampy base, which is quite nice. So we've got these are height 0 or height flat. Height flat. I think these are flat. I can't remember. There was a board that told us, and I think these are flat over here. height 4 building, height 4 woods, height 1 obstacles, and a height 2 hill. Another cool thing is that these hills are all removable and there's a template underneath. So rather than trying to balance your units across hills, you just take them off like you can with the woods, which is a really nice addition. Obviously a little dice are our deployment areas. So let's look at deployment. So we're going to turn the camera around, if you like, to be facing where I'm standing, which is my side. I think he chose sides. So this is on the, is it on the right? It is on the right hand side of the board, so my left. Look, little appearance of my hand there, how exciting. So I stuck my dragon on the left here. He actually went down last. And then we had the two cavalry units together with a gargoyle unit behind them. So the idea of that is to stick them forward, put the gargoyles in front of them, and somebody has to charge the gargoyles rather than charge my knights. I then get a counter charge with all my thunderous charge intact. And then next to them we have the Scarecrows with another unit of gargoyles behind them, and there is the standard bearer, just giving them, putting them up to a -22. Again, similar principle, just need to protect them because I don't want them to get charged because they're pretty weak. And then on the other flank we've got both chariots, the goblin / high priestess, so they're ready to jump up onto the hill. Not that they really need it because they're already height 3. And the other dragon on the left flank. And the reason they are there you will see when we see my opponent's deployment. So he deployed really heavily on the right flank. It's worth saying that the scenario here was, what's it called? The one where you have to occupy. Is it occupy? The one where you've got the 6 segments. It's split. The board is split into 6 segments. You get 2 for being in the middle one that's opposite you, and you get 1 for any other segment. So I think it is called. Bear with. Control. It was control. So I'm not quite sure why, but he chucked a ton of stuff on the left-hand flank. So given that I've only got my chariots there, I really needed a dragon to try and do some protection. So this is his chariots with one of the unit's mummies behind them. There's the soul snare item, and those are his regiment of revenants. Next to them, so there's his cursed high priest on a horse. There's the horde of skeletons, and that's the restless regiment of the Rye. So I mean, really nicely modelled. They're really cool. And there's the scavengers just next to them, as you can see. And then, so they're kind of into the middle of the board. Then we've got his behemoth, which is this brilliant undead mammoth. The other mummies, the Pharaoh on a chariot, and his horsemen, who are all modelled with tiny little fezzes, which is really, really cool. We'll see a close-up of them in a bit. And he's kind of pushed everything to the back of the board to limit my shooting. So turn 1, I won turn 1 and I went first. So we hopped all the chariots and the dragon and the high priestess forward to do some shooting. That hill didn't last long before I took it off. And then everything else just kind of moved up as well. A really boring first move. There was not a lot to do. A bit of lightning bolts and a bit of shooting. So shooting wise, my main concern now is to get rid of the restless souls of the doodars, but this soul snare, you know, I don't like anything that can heal the enemy, because it makes my job much, much harder, because basically with my army being so fragile, I need to take things off in a single go when we actually get into combat. So both chariots shot at him with 8 points of damage. And then on the other side we did a bit of lightning bolting onto his chariot. Did not bad, 3 points of damage, but he's got regen I think on that, hasn't he? So that's yeah, much of a muchness. Okay then, so turn 1 for the enemy. So again, he just moved everything up there, so slightly outside of charge range, apart from the gargoyles, because if I send the gargoyles in, they'll just die. You can see I've hopped my dragon across here. So what I'm trying to get him to do is to charge my gargoyles, so I can then flank him, but obviously he's not going to do that. It's a slightly clearer photo. And then on the right hand side, this was at the end of turn 1, so that's why it says a little 2 there, because we hadn't quite started turn 2, so everything else had moved forward, and his restless souls of the Rye chucked their barrels at my left hand chariots, and did 5 points of damage. He also cast weakness on them, so then I got weakness and 5 points of damage. Boo! Yep, so that's that. So then turn 2 for me. So we shot at his chariots. Now, which one have we shot at the chariots? I can't remember which. One of them shot at the chariots. We only did 2 points of damage, which is pointless. However, we did shoot everything else that we had from here. So pretty much the Dragon's Lightning Bolt, 18 from them. The Priestess in there, but she couldn't quite reach with Fireball. So I think she Bane Chanted. We've got a Bane Chant off onto the Elite Chariots, which are these ones. And we deleted the rest of the Souls of the Ray, which is great, because I didn't want them to run in and do melee on Blast D3, because, no thank you. So yeah, there's the gap where they used to be. So that was pretty successful for us for a turn 2. And he took the charge into my Gargoyles, which was, well, I'm not going to say it's a great idea. But I suppose it's either that or I charge him, maybe. I'm not really sure why he would do that, but there you go. I suppose his cavalry are pretty expendable. They're not brilliant. He had given them elite, but which makes them more expensive than chaff should be. He shouldn't have given them elite because he didn't have enough points. But what he's done here is really expose himself to a ton of pain. So anyway, but this photo is really nice because you can see the little fezzes, and he's kind of giving them cow skin shields. It's just so cool. Anyway, did he do any damage? I think he might have done. We'll see in a minute. These guys just all kind of shambled forwards a bit more, but not that much, because I think they were trying to not be charged. He was being quite cautious on this flank, which suited me absolutely fine, to be honest. I think he was a bit shaken by taking off the restless souls of the doodahs. And then these guys just moved up like yay. Right, so these are his shooting. So this was the soul drain from his soul snare and his was the archers? Did he have archers? Where's the archers? Where are his archers? Pause for thought. I don't think he had archers. Maybe that's the 80 points. There are no archers. How much is a skeleton archer? If it's 80 points, and we've solved our issue. And in which case I've been deeply unfair, and I would like to humbly apologise. Oh, look at that! I've got Easy Army open. Oh God, everything just comes together so perfectly. Empire of Dust. 75. No, 100 points. So was he 20 points under? Whatever. So he didn't have any archers, but it was the chariots that were shooting me. Okay. Anyway, where were we? So they took me up to 10 points of damage on this unit of chariots, which means that they're a bit buggered. And you can see that he's popped his scavengers here, which puts them within charge range. So I can see them with my chariots, but it threatens across my flank, which is not very nice. So then he did wipe my gargoyles. That's right. So he... Oh, no, he didn't. He did a few points of damage, but he didn't manage to kill them. And then I basically shoved them over here so they could just regen all the damage off, moved the scarecrows up, and I charged my... are they the strength ones? No, these are the brutal ones. The ones with brutal into his cavalry to get rid of them. And I then hopped my dragon behind the house here to really put some pressure on. So he's got 3 flanks exposed to a dragon, which is not what you want. And I think with these horses, I think I just moved them out of the woods so that they wouldn't be hindered when they charged, because those ones were charging hindered. It's still on 4s because the Dark Knights are brilliant, but there you go. So I think we shot the scavengers off rather than do anything else. In fact, that's right. So we used our lightning bolts and fireball from the dragon and from the priestess to get rid of the scavengers, and then we piled the rest of my arrows into the soul snare dude. I managed to delete it, which was really a big weight off my mind, because that was kind of his major strength here. And I think really this was a real mistake for him, because he's been really reticent with everything here. This mummy unit is absolutely brutal. What he should be doing is pushing all of this stuff up as fast as possible to then hammer me with the mummies when I kill this stuff here, when I kill his are they revenants? Whatever they're called. No, they're just normal skeletons, aren't they? His spearmen, his skeleton spearmen, and his warriors. So if he'd shuffled these up, I would have been in a much less advantageous position here, having got rid of his soul snare and his chaff. There you go. And so we did 6 points of damage from the charge onto his mummies, which is a bit of an upside down picture. Apologies about that. Turn your head on the side, it looks nice. There you go. I just didn't delete the picture. It looks better that way. And then, worrying about this Horde, he charged his Behemoth into my Horde, unhindered because it's got a Strider. And that's just a really nice, cool close-up of a really nice unit. But he didn't do much damage because we're dash 21, and he's not got that many attacks. So he then turned his mummies. So basically, this dragon was, remember, was threatening the flank, so he didn't really have a lot of choice apart from to move forward. But what he thought he would do was try a lucky surge. Now, I don't like surge. It really worries me because I find it difficult to play against. But he's got surge 10 on his Pharaoh, and as you can see from that handily placed tape measure, this was basically a 7 or an 8. So he needed to really roll it out of the bag to hit me, which he didn't. I think he got a 5 or a 4, so he ended up with his mummies facing the wrong direction and my dragon still flying, threatening all the flanks that I was threatening previously. Not good. So then on this left hand side, so he started to move his stuff up, probably a little bit too late, and he's got his High Priest here who fireballed my Gargoyles, 3 points of damage, but wavered them because they've got a crappy nerve. Now I got really excited at this point because you can see here there's an edge, the edge of the base, so he's turned it so he can do the fireball. The edge of his base is exposed, and if you remember, I've got a dragon on this side of the board, and I was like that, yeah boy, I'm going to corkscrew the hell out of your High Priest. Unfortunately, I've got a charge of 20, and it was 21 inches, so a lucky coincidence for him because I don't think he meant to do that. And that is his double one that he rolled in trying to shoot off my chariots. So a little bit of bad luck. You can see there we've taken the hill off on the right hand side. And his horsemen, because I failed to kill them with those 6 points of damage, went back into mine and wavered them. 3 points of damage and a double 6 waver. So you've got a double 1 on one side. It wasn't maybe a double 6 or 11. I was saying I'm a 13-15. So yeah, he would have had to have a double 6. So he double 6 wavered my horses after double 1ing my chariots. He giveth and he taketh away. So these are my well, no, I probably can charge the other ones. Well, we'll see. And there's the 4 points of damage that he did onto my Horde of Scarecrows, which is laughably not enough. So we are now into turn 4. At some point we actually lost track of the turns. We had to backtrack and go, exactly what turn are we on? Turn 4. So I took a picture of the dice just to say, we're definitely on turn 4 now. So there you go. The dragon was over here where that tape measure was. Mummies failed to do anything about it. Flanking your Behemoth. And you can see here that I've shifted these Dark Knights to the side, allowing my other Dark Knights, which are the Brew of Strength ones, to charge these Horsemen. And I've just moved my Gargoyles back to regen all the damage off, because Gargoyles are amazing. And then on this side, we continued shooting, because he's not moved his stuff forward quick enough, and shot off his chariot, so that's his range threat removed. So pretty neat. There you go. So the Brew of Strength Knights deleted the Horseman unit, which is pretty neat. So it's getting, it a little bit overwhelming. Basically, I think with his mum, he should have been much more aggressive with his mummies, because they're the really powerful unit here. Anything they touch pretty much dies. But he kind of struggled to get them into position because he was being a little bit too cautious with his smaller units. So we didn't manage to kill the Behemoth with the flank, which was disappointing. You think about it, we've got 30 attacks in the front. Okay, on 5s and 5s. Is it 5s for Behemoth? Back to easy army. Screen turn on. Behemoth. 6s, that's why. Okay, he's defense 6. Which is probably why we didn't kill him. So even 20 on 3s and 3s, and then 25 on 5 and 6. Yeah, nah, we're probably not going to take him off in it. He's a dash 16. Anyway, we didn't kill him. Boo-hoo. And so on his turn, he brought his mummies round, and he moved them up and tried to surge them forward. I'm not sure if he surged them in or not. We'll see in a minute. And as you can see, the Behemoth turned around to attack the dragons, which is the more worrying threat for a defense 6 unit because he's crushing 3. And he did get the surge, so he managed to surge them into the front of my horsemen. And there's a nice close-up action shot of Behemoth on dragon action. Pretty nice looking model, so I think it's a nice one. And over here, fireball. That's right. So he fireballed off my my chariots, which are pretty wounded, so that's not a great surprise. And now he's looking a little bit desperate on this flank. But don't forget the scenario we're in, which is where the centre is more important because it's 2 points. Over here, he's got 3 units against my 1 unit. Now I think he did keep one of them back, so keep control of 2 sectors. But obviously these chariots not looking very healthy right now. And so on my turn, obviously I countercharged into his behemoth and destroyed it. It doesn't look like he did any damage. Oh, is that my charge? Is that why? Bear with. No, that is his charge. Did he bounce? Surely not. Maybe I just forgot to put the damage dice on. Anyway, we countercharged and we wiped off his mummies and we wiped off his behemoth. So his entire left flank has basically collapsed apart from this poor little pharaoh on a chariot. The gargoyles moved up here, so basically I just sat in his sector here. I've got this sector here, so I've got scarecrows in my home sector, and I've got gargoyles in his home sector, and he's got nothing there. That's 3 points already, and I've got potentially up to 2 sectors on the left-hand side here. And he's got his poor little high priest, pharaoh on a chariot, who's looking slightly worried. And then over on this side, I've still got my dragon, which I don't think I was using very well. What would I have been doing with that? Oh, that's right, I shoved it up the side, because basically the dragons are good, but only in the flank. 10 attacks in the front is rubbish with this amount of troops. So I moved him over here just to put some threat on. And all that really did was make him kind of shift his high priest behind a building so I couldn't lightning bolt him anymore. Turn his mummies to face, so basically keeping him in the sector so he gets the points. Because I've only got 1 unit strength to his 2. And then he moves everything up to threaten my chariots here, which kind of backed away and tried to shoot stuff not very effectively. And with not a lot left to do, he sent his chariot, his pharaoh on a chariot, into my horses. These are the brutal Dark Knights. And as you can see, he did manage to finally catch my chariots because we achieved, this was on turn 7. So turn 6, it was looking pretty poor, so I had a 2, 3, 4 to 2 victory on points. So basically he just moved over to, there's not a lot he could do on this flank now because he concentrated so hard on this flank and it took so long to get my chariots off that he basically just has to kind of move in. So he moved the chariots up. He moved his warriors up and his spearmen, which both went through both my priestess and then overran into my chariots. There's them attacking the priestess. And there is a waver onto my horses, so he did 8 points damage, which is pretty great. I think they had 3 already. So for that chariot, that's a pretty strong round, and he wavered them, but, you know, whatever. It's turn 7. I know my dragon hopped over to the left to make sure I got that segment. And then his high priest popped around the side of the house and fireballed the living crap out of my gargoyles. And there they go, so 6 points damage from a fireball. Took them off in a single turn, which was... yeah, it's alright. Basically just lost me an extra tournament point. Not really that point. And he managed to get the charge and then utterly wiped my chariots for a bit of satisfaction at the end of the game. And that's the 16 points of damage that he managed to do onto them, which was the end of them. So at the end of that game, I won with a 4-2 victory, which is pretty good. So pleased with that for a first game. Obviously, I think, you know, his list had some issues with it, and it wasn't the most... it wasn't really optimized. Plus, he's not really that used to playing the game. So I, you know, acknowledge, not a difficult first game. Plus, I got some really lucky rolls. But there you go. So that was the end of game 1. Let's go on to game 2. All right then, on to game 2. So I always said that the 2 armies that I fear the most are the Undead and Empire Dust, because I find Surge difficult to play against. And then game 1 was Empire Dust, game 2 Undead. So yeah, thanks a lot, guys. So this was against a guy who, I think his name was Panda? Certainly said call me Panda. Anyway, So he had an undead list, mostly unpainted, I would say, just because he just got the models and hadn't painted them yet. But there you go. That's life sometimes. So this was his undead list. So really interesting, different approach. No items at all. Literally just rammed it with stuff. He basically wants to overwhelm, which is a challenge in one way. And I think with undead, it adds a certain something to it because it makes them very not punchy. But we'll see. And I have got this list right after I put archers unceremoniously incorrectly and then accused my opponent of having the wrong points value in the last one, which I again apologise for. So we have 2 regiments of basic warriors, a regiment of archers. He's definitely got archers in this list. A horde of revenants, so they're pretty punchy. 2 legions of zombies, which is just, that's 2-28 legions. Hey. A regiment of my literally 100% most feared unit in the game, which is Soul Reaver Cavalry. A troop of Revenant Cavalry, bit of chaff. 3 catapults, which are super dicey, but when they hit, they're really painful. 2 Revenant Kings on Undead Worms, so not the flying ones, just normal worms. And an ASP. So that's his list. My list will obviously remain the same. So this was the battlefield. So it's not a nice theme, but this is Golok's Brewery, I believe, is this battlefield, which is obviously Golok's Brewery. Anyway, so it's got a kind of cool little dwarven brewery here and a little dwarven building. It's quite nice. So it's got 3 height 4 buildings. It's got a height, I want to say height 0. Bit of difficult terrain in the middle of the battlefield, but quite an open battlefield, which is good and bad. And a height 2 height 4 woods here. So good and bad because, and a wall. Focus, Stephen. 2 walls. There's another wall here. Good and bad. So I've obviously got shooting. So having a nice clear line of sight is great. But he has got 3 catapults, which he's positioned across the battlefield. Now, this one on the left, we'll see when he does his deployment. I don't think is placed in the right place at all. But, the other 2 do have clear lines of sight. So let's look at my deployment. So from the right-hand side, I've got a troop of Gargoyles hiding behind a house, so he can't shoot them off with the catapult. Here is my Goblin/High Priestess and the Elite Chariots. If you know what these holes are, by the way, there were dice wells, so I could put damage dice in them, which works okay, but I think looks rubbish. So I might cover them up with a bush or something in the future, or a rock. We'll see. And then next to them we've got, so I put this deployment I did differently, so I put 1 chariot, 1 horse on each side to give a bit of dual threat. So these are the Brutal Knights. And these are the Scarecrows with their Gargoyles and Standard, which is Standard. How I deploy them. There. Oops, wrong way. Next to them we have the other unit of Knights with the Chariots. So these are the Brewer Strength Knights, and these are the Vanilla Chariots with nothing on them. Actually, that base is really looking worn now. Look at that. Look where the flock has all fallen off. Need to redo it. The chariots were one of the first things I ever made, by the way, with this army. I've got a bunch of old chariots and just kind of knocked them together. So the paint job is poor, the modelling is poor. Anyway, and I put both dragons on the left-hand side. Just put them together for a bit of a laugh. Where's the Gargoyles? Gargoyles. Oh, there they are. Okay, cool. So yeah, and you'll see why I've done that, because on the right-hand side he's stacked. So the scenario was scavenge for this one. So scavenge is where you have the tokens in the middle, 3 of them, and if you land on them, you can take a loot counter, reducing your speed by 5, means you can't fly. And the person with the most loot counters at the end is the winner. So if you look back at the here we go. You'll see the loot. So there's 1 there, 1 here, and 1 here, so spread across. So basically whoever can pick up the most. So what he's done with his deployment, you can see here, he's absolutely stacked it up, all his hitty units on this right hand side, to basically try and dominate over here onto this counter. That's okay, except for the bloody great big building in the way. I think possibly because I put a dragon there, he's put a lot there as well. Maybe, I can't remember who put it first. He's obviously got his legion, so we'll see those in a minute. So we'll just quickly skip through my deployment, you'll see where he's put his stuff. Whoops. So on the right hand side, this is a skeleton warriors. These are the Soul Reaver Cavalry, and here's his horde of revenants with the archers behind them. Then there's the first Balefire Catapult. There's his troop of Revenant Cavalry with one of the kings on a worm behind it. There's his first Horde of Legion of Zombies with the Standard Bearer and the Catapult next to them. The second Legion of Zombies over here to kind of hop up onto that other token and start collecting. And then on the left hand side he's got his other worm, Skeleton Warriors, and the final Catapult. So yeah, that's deployment. What have I skipped here? Let's just skip back and look at the battlefield just to kind of give us an idea where we were. Right. So what we've got here, so he's obviously going to try and get his legions onto these tokens as quickly as possible, and they just try and weather the storm with their dash 28 nerve, and then obviously try and come around the side and then shoot me off with his catapults. All of his hitty stuff on the right hand side, we're just going to try and overwhelm my dragons. We shall see. My plan is obviously shuffle Scarecrows forward onto this central token and just sit there, and then shoot as much of this off as I can. But I need to try and get rid of his catapults like immediately because they're his main ranged threat. By the time we meet in the middle, I'll have, you know, chariots and knights smashing into things as hard as possible, and then trying to get some dragon flanks. That was basically my strategy. He didn't have a lot of surge in this army. That made me feel a bit more comfortable, but I was extremely nervous about this right flank, particularly facing off against both of my dragons, because Soul Reavers, you just don't want to face them. So, okay, right. So this was whoa, back up. First round of shooting, basically. I just tried to take off. Did I take off the legions? Why would I do that? That doesn't seem sensible. Oh no, I know what it is. I know I'm showing you. Notice here. Catapult. First turn of shooting. No catapult. Right, so I got rid of one of the catapults first turn. And in fact I got rid of two of the catapults first turn. So my first two volleys of shooting, I think they were actually lightning bolts, managed to get rid of both catapults, which was awesome. And I used the rest of my shooting to put 7 points of damage onto that central legion. So an exceptionally successful first turn. I'm very lucky with my dice, and I was really pleased. Especially since as I got first turn, I moved to take those shots, so I was shooting on 5s. So you can see here we moved up. So we chucked the Gargoyles forward. We left a little shooting lane for the chariots here, and we were just vaguely threatening in the middle with a lot of stuff moving forwards. On the right hand side, so there you go. So we went straight into the woods with the chariots, which we stayed for a quite considerable time. And on the right hand side you can see the dragons we just hopped up and kind of offered some threat projection over here. Although looking at that, I would be mad to charge with a single dragon any of that, because it would just kill me. There we go. As what I thought I'd do with this dragon is offer some threat, so when he comes forward with his revenants, there's a flank opportunity. So then here's turn 1. There's the 2 chariots which have died. Shame. Everything moved forward. And here as well, so basically just shambled up, and then he's got his archers just offering in support. And, oh, look at that hand. Ooh, a suspiciously tattooed hand. Moving forward, so he's offering his Soul Reavers. I think this was a mistake, if I'm honest, because what he's done, he's taken his most punchy unit and he's restricted it to the narrowest part possible here. Because there is no way I'm obviously going to leave my dragon just to face a charge by them. It's madness. So that limited him quite a lot, I think, on this flank, because that's his most powerful unit that's now really limited in its movement. Just my opinion. Just my opinion. So then my turn 2, I want to say. We chucked everything forward. So I thought, this is quite a good opportunity for me, really. So I put the Gargoyles onto this token and picked up some loot. Do you know what? This wasn't scavenge, this was loot. This was just vanilla loot. So these were loot tokens that you could pick up. That's why the Gargoyles... I picked them up and then instantly dropped it, by the way. And likewise, I didn't want this legion picking up the token, and I saw the opportunity. I could actually charge both horses in at the same time, so it was in charge range for both of them. So we multi-charged the Horde with both sets of horses, in the hope that I could just kind of, given that I'd already taken 7 points of damage, I thought I might be able to knock this off in one turn. And there you go, close up of that charge. That should be nice. And the right hand side, what happened here? I've shot something, I think. Wonder what it is. Don't know. Remember, this is his move up? Nope. What was there? Let's hop back and have a look. Sorry, I'm not doing very well here, am I? Oh, that's right, it's the Rev Cav. There's his Revenant Cavalry, which he'd left in cover to try and protect them, but it didn't, basically. But yeah, no, not good. So I knocked off his Revenant Cavalry with chariots. So yay shooting. Ah, that's right, because it was shooting and it was 2 dragons worth of damage, and I rolled an 11 on the nerve. So yeah, feel bad for them. But you can see what I've done is I've hopped my dragon over here. So now his Soul Reaver Cavalry and this unit of warriors are completely wasted because I'm out of his line of sight. And we did manage to kill the Legion in a single charge, which is not that surprising considering how bad their defense is. And I'm hitting on 4s, even hindered. 4s and 2s. 36 attacks, 4s and 2s. It was enough. That is bad news for him. And I picked up the token and instantly dropped it again. And this is how we reformed. So one facing each way. Let's split our forces. Then, in hilarious move of the month, I shot my Gargoyles over the back to attack this king because I didn't really want him coming in, and then forgot to roll it. So stupid. So after being very successful in Legion, I forgot to roll the combat at all. And then his Legion of Zombies charged into my Gargoyles. And his King on Undead Worm ate my Gargoyles alive. So he, on the counter charge, it wasn't a counter charge because I never actually attacked him. He then rolled a 6 for the overrun. So he's rammed straight into the building, which is way more than he actually wanted to. These are really cool Rune Wars miniatures, by the way, if you're wondering where they're from. They're ace. Slightly better when painted. And so what happened then, on this side, on my next turn, so the Legion, I think, knocked off my Gargoyles. We'll have a look in a second. I think I lost both Gargoyles on one turn. These horses and 1 dragon went into the Worm, because he didn't really have a lot of places he could go with that. And the other dragon went into the back of the archers, and then the chariots went into his Horde of Revenants. So not having the Soul Reavers there to offer threat because they were facing the wrong way, not good. And as you can see, they did wipe out my Gargoyles. But then that allowed me to countercharge. You can see his Worm still here. It allowed me to countercharge, or not countercharge, but charge with the chariots and the knights at the same time. So that's 10. That's 17 damage in a single turn. But we didn't manage to waver them. Well, I can't waver because they're zombies, but did manage to kill them. Dash 28, very strong. So we just backed up. What this does is offer a really nice roadblock. So I've picked up something, I've dropped it, and he's going to have to get rid of both of these units with his stuff if he wants to get through. See, Legions are cool because they're such high nerve, but they are a massive footprint. It makes them really hard if you want to get things around. So, obviously we killed the Worm and we killed the Archers, which allowed me to turn 6 points of damage onto this Horde from my Chariots, but that's not enough. So we turned here to face off against the Soul Reavers, who of course were now swinging around and ready to unleash hell. So let me pick up a token and dropping it, and I've got the other token. So I picked up the token on my Scarecrow Horde by shuffling forwards, which is basically all it's good for. So here he's turned his guys ready to face me, but again they're so far back it's too little too late, I feel. You can see here, by the way, boy am I low on time. I actually timed out, I forgot to mention I timed out in the last game. The reason that he got a charge on me for the Empire of Dustin and I didn't manage to charge him with my chariots is I ran out of time. I timed out for turn 7, so I didn't actually get to play turn 7. Still won. Ha! So he chose then, so his guy couldn't charge because he was facing the wrong way. So he just turned his Worm round and he charged his Legion into my horses, doing 5 points of damage. I think the plan here is that he brings these warriors up. Are they warriors or are they revenants? Revenants. Revenants. No, warriors. Warriors. to kind of engage here with the horses. His poor bloody Balefire catapult there in the corner hasn't managed to shoot anything because of lines of sight. It's been really it's just a lesson about placement of war engines. I think he tried to basically drop Screaming Skulls onto my Goblin/Sorceress and failed for a couple of turns. Okay, and the Revenants went back into the horses and didn't do a lot, I think. Oh, there you go. So they already had 5 points of damage. Sorry, my bad. He already had 5 points of damage and managed to kill my horses with his Legion. Not surprising. Is it surprising? A little bit surprising. Less surprising here is that the dual flank onto these Revenants utterly destroyed them. And I moved my other dragon over here to the corner to offer a threat onto the flank of these two pretty impotent units over here. So yeah, I completely wiped them off the face of the planet. He then managed to get his worm out, and so the countercharge. The countercharge from my chariots killed his horde. Good. And then his warriors and worm charged into my chariots. Bad. Yeah, so then it was it multi-charge? Right, so I've missed something here. I think that's right. All he could do was basically move forward and position, and then the triple charge from as a flank from one dragon, a front from the other dragon, knights, chariots, everything. Basically wiped both units off the table. I'm not quite sure what I'm taking photographs of there. Or there? What was that? I think that was his standard bearer. Was it his standard bearer? I really should be better at, if I'm going to do battle reports, it's actually quite good to pay attention to what's happening on the table. Clearly something has died. Oh no, I jumped onto the loot token. That's what's happening there. So that dragon's jumped onto a loot token. And as you can see, his skeletons and worm did 6 points damage on my chariots. And I've bought this Scarecrow Horde across, which picked up the other loot token. So I've now got 2 loot tokens. And that's his standard bearer on a round base, weirdly. And looking very terrified because that's all he is. So his countercharge then did an additional 5 onto my chariots, which wasn't enough. Which is surprising. It's 15-17. Band of the Griffin, I suppose, so there'll be a 16-18, but they didn't manage to waver or kill me. So then we picked up this loot token. That's right, so I picked it up with the dragon, dropped it, chariots picked it up. The knights went into his standard bearer, understandably killing him, and everything else just kind of shot over just in case. We went into his worm. I don't know if he already had 8 points of damage or whether we did 8 points of damage. Obviously we obliterated him there. That's right, and I flew this dragon over to. The plan was lightning bolt this catapult off. What it actually did was expose me to this catapult, and for the first time in the game, the catapult managed to hit something, and did 5 points of damage onto my dragon, which is actually a griffin, but it's a dragon. All right. Yeah, countercharge from these guys. Finally managed to kill my chariots, but unfortunately it is too little, too late. Useful for attrition, but there you go. And that was the end. So a 3-0 victory to me. Yay! So this put me up pretty high in the rankings, and there was one player that I was very nervous about playing, which was a guy called Stefan Donovan, who is a very expert player, and he'd bought his Elves. He was actually one of the TOs and the spare player, but because he was doing really well, because he's one of the best players that we've got in the region, I knew he would be at the top. So having had 2 pretty resounding victories, I pretty much knew that I was going to face Stefan in the next round, and lo and behold I did for round 3. So let's go and look at game 3. Okay, ploughing merrily into game 3. So they unsurprisingly faced against Stefan, which I found very stressful. If you go onto Facebook and search for the Coming Storm, no, sorry, not Coming Storm, what's it called? Forge Warden. If you search for the Forge Wardens event, there's a lot of photographs of the event. Actually, if you go onto the Celestial Forge page, search for Celestial Forge, I think in their timeline photos, they've got loads of photos. If you find the photos of me playing Steph, I look stressed. I am wearing an elf hat, but I look stressed because I was stressed. Largely because the other TO, who knew this match was coming, knew that I'd never beaten Steph in any game ever, was hanging over my shoulder for the first 2 turns. And I'm like, could you not? It's bad enough I'm playing him anyway. And you'll see why it's nerve-wracking. So he was playing elves. It was an elf off. And this was his list. So in contrast to the previous list, Steph likes items. Let me tell you, wow. So super elite, super punchy, and he's a very good player. So Horde of Archers with Heart-Seeking Chance, which a lot of elf players run. I don't, but everyone else does. A Horde of Seaguard then with Wine of Elvenkind, which is a hideously expensive unit, but it gives them nimble. So although they shoot on 5s, it means they can do 2 turns, they can turn and shoot without penalty. It's a nice combo. 2 Regiments of Shamblers. A Forest Warden to add a little bit of Surge, so Surge 3, but he basically is given him Blizzard and the Inspiring Talisman. Then the Mystical Dragon, to whom he's given Boots of Levitation. So this is another really popular combo. You'll see it on people like... In fact, this list is quite similar to Tom Robinson's list. It means that he can fly 20 and still fireball. The reason I don't run it like this is because of my fear of Undead, because if you're within 12, he can be surged into. But obviously I don't have Surge, so it works for him. Horde of Draken Riders with the Brewer Strength. You'll see the model in a minute. It was the only model in his army he hadn't quite finished modelling, but he'd got hold of some of the original Drakons and modelled them really nicely. This is a beautifully painted army, so this battle report will be pretty, if nothing else. 1 Dragon Breath, which again, he's got one of the original Dragon Breaths, really nice. Mounted ASB with a Diadem, and a Foot ASB with a Lute. And then he's got a Noble War Chariot, to which he's given the Skull Pole. So that's his 2,000 point list. Very punchy, very elite. There's not a lot to criticise about this very good list, frankly. On to the game. So, I can't remember what the theme of this one was. I think it was a village. Anyway. So this was pillage. So its basic objective markers, each worth 1. So we have got a height 2 hill. We've got 2 height 4 forests. We've got 3 buildings, which are height 4. I managed to break this one trying to take the top off. Sorry, guys. There's a wall there. There's walls on either side. So there's like this walls going all the way across. It's nice. It's like a proper landscape. And there's a height 0 field here. And I think there's another one somewhere down on the left possibly, but it didn't really enter into the play very much. So let's look at deployment. So my deployment. Oh, this is his deployment. So from left to right, he's put his Shamblers behind this building to pop round and kind of sit on a token, which is sensible. And then he's got his Seaguard and Archers next to each other. So Seaguard there and Archers there. You know what I mean about looking nice? Really beautiful. It's worth saying that they're actually a professional painting service as well. So this is some of their nicest work. It's got everything's got water on it. It's just great. And then, sorry, blurry photo, apologies. But he's got his Mystical Dragon here. And I think there's a Standard Bearer. Well, that's the Mounted Standard Bearer behind the Drakons. So these half-finished Drakons, but they're really cool. You see them some pictures later. They're really nice. And then over here, he's got his Dragon Breath behind the house. He's got his Blizzard Warden here. Here's the guy on the Chariot, and here's the other Shamblers. So what we've got here in the corner, you've got 10 Breath and a Diadem there. You've got 15 Fireball here. Another 15 Breath here, and you've got 4 Blizzard and 4 Archers, 4 arrows here. So you don't want to be getting in amongst them, put it that way, because they will just turn around and shoot the living hell out of you. So then my deployment from the left to the right. So opposite the shooting Breath Dragon Death Wall, I've got both horsemen with the Sorceress / Goblin and some Drakons. No, Drakons, what are they called? Gargoyles behind them. That's a special guest appearance from my wrist. Then I've got both dragons facing off against his Drakons and his dragon. Super blurry pictures, by the way. Hands are shaking. And then on the left and the right hand side against his kind of wall of arrows from the the Therannian Seaguard and the Archer Horde, I've got a Chariot Horde on the left. And obviously I've got my stealthy Gargoyles facing them. And the other Gargoyles and my other unit of Chariots. So let's just go back and look at that deployment against each other. Right, so basically he's got shooting like gun line of doom over here with a little bit to go and sit on things. To which I've put all the shooting that I've basically got to try and. So the idea is to get the Scarecrows up onto here. They're stealthy and they're dash 22, so he's not going to be able to shoot them off too easily. I want to use the Gargoyles to try and shut down one of these hordes and then try and shoot them off with my chariots, or at least get the chariots into them. He's very, very good at positioning dragons, and I just wanted to try and use my flying threat to hold of his flying threat for as long as possible. And I just want to get my knights into all of this nonsense over here. Try and get into the Dracons as well and really hold off that threat. But pretty evenly matched, I think, this one. The objective markers, just for note, there's one down here somewhere. There's 5 total. There's one here, one here, one here, one here. So there's 4 in this little region here. And the 5th one is over here in the woods. So we spend an enormous amount of time fighting over one loot token, one objective marker here, but actually all 4 of them are over here where he's got his his gun line, and I've got my chariots. So it's going to be quite a balancy game. So on to the match. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Back up there. So I actually won the roll for first turn, and in what was probably a mistake, I gave him the first turn. That being because I wanted him to come forward so I could shoot him without penalties, because I needed to focus my shooting as much as possible. That was my thought, but. A friend behind me, when I said, right, you can have first turn, he started, just turned around and went, that was a mistake. Thanks, Simon. Anyway, so these are his vanguard moves. So he vanguarded up his Shamblers here. These are my charge ranges. And his Shamblers up here. Just turned round, I think, to come round, I think, just in case I try to shoot down that flank. And then in his first turn, he obviously moved up with his archers and his Seaguard. And he's popped his dragon, this dragon behind the house, so he can't see anything. And these Dracons have just kind of moved up just outside charge range. So I can't charge this guy with my dragons. There was actually, so if you think of the line of sight that comes across here, and comes across here, when it comes to my turn, there is a little space here into which I could pop a dragon. I didn't. I've just remembered the other standard bearer is over with the archers. That's where he is, the standard bearer with the loot. So I could have popped a dragon here, but then I would have had a fireball 15, a breath 10, and then he would have been able to trundle over his war engine. So I would have faced 25 breath and a fireball. Yeah, so I didn't do that. And everything else just moved up here. So he's got his little... He's hiding stuff behind here just in case. Cowardly. So then... have I skipped his shooting? There you go. Basically what he did was in a single turn, he put 10 points of damage onto one chariot and 6 onto the other. Wow. You know, let's just say he rolled incredibly well. So with my shooting, I put, I think, 6 points of damage, possibly, onto his archer horde, which wasn't enough to do anything. And his shooting, I think this was turn 2 shooting by the look of it, because I've moved up. Yeah, so his turn 2 shooting. It might still be turn 1. Anyway, absolute ton of damage. 10 damage in a single turn onto a 15-17 unit is worrying in the extreme. So I moved these guys up to be nice and threatening. One of them in the woods. Move this dragon up. Move both dragons up. There's 1 point of damage on this dragon, which was from the blizzard, which I wasn't very worried about. And that's my lightning bolts put 2 points of damage onto his Dracons. So this is a better shot of the Dracon. So the base, as you can see, is already done. So nice, so nice. And these are the original Dracons that you could get from Mantic, but he's modified them to basically look cooler, and they do look really cool. That looks really nice. Not quite finished yet. So this was my first mistake. So then in his turn 2, so turn 1, if you remember, he'd shot his dragon up behind this house here. And despite the fact that I play dragons all the time, and I know that you can just fly over this building, I just didn't think. And I moved both my dragons up, as you saw, to here. So I moved them both up, and I moved them both facing forwards. So what that means is that a 20-inch charge up to, or 20-inch move up to here means he could shoot his dragon up and be utterly out of line of sight of everyone. And I don't have the kind of breath attack power that his list has. So that's basically what he did. He moved the dragon over. It's an inch away from my chariots. I was on the left-hand side of here, so it wasn't between the dragons, it was on the other side. An inch away from my chariots. My dragon couldn't see him, and that is really, really bad. Because he can obviously just fireball me, and that's what he did. So he chucked his dragon over, because he's got the boots of levitation, fireball 15, boom, explodes, bad. So turn 2, lost one of my chariot hordes. I'm not feeling very good about this. And all the archers shot the other chariot horde, which puts them up to 11 damage. They didn't die, but that's 11 damage. So I've got quite an elite force, and he's managed to shoot off or blow up nearly both of my shooting units. So a little bit worried about that, to say the least. So this is how I moved my guys over. So there's another blizzard there. We did another point of damage. So basically I moved this dragon over to a protecting kind of place. Not really that great, because he can just shoot his dragon over here behind me, which he will do very shortly. This is turn 2, by the way. Look how much time we've already used. A lot of worrying about movement. You can see the objective marker here. And so I just moved my other dragon up here. I think people say that as soon as you start turning things around to face a threat behind you, you're in a very disadvantageous place. But I couldn't really do anything else in this case. So turned around, tried to do some lightning bolted, and moved kind of these guys up. So I'm just moving these guys up to threaten. And you can see what I've done here is shoot my gargoyles over to attack his Seaguard, to at least switch off that shooting, which I managed to do. You can see the 1 point of damage I managed to do onto them, so that was good. There's some lightning bolts. Did 4 points of damage onto his mystical dragon. Not enough to do anything wild. There's the 1 point of damage from my gargoyles onto his Seaguard, which was a very good result. So they can't shoot me this turn. And the other chariot unloaded and put them up to 13 points of damage on his archers, which is another good result. So although I'm in a bad position, having lost a chariot and I'm about to lose another chariot, I am managing to pile damage onto his archers. So that's where we ended up. That's the position. You can see what he can just do is turn this dragon 20 over here, and again he will be out of line of sight. So not good positioning from me. Fortunately though, with the dragon facing this way, I am managing to keep his Dracons back, because he can't bring them forward because he knows he's going to get charged by Dark Knights. And that obviously is 20 out. My dragon is out of 20, so he couldn't charge me in the rear. Okay, so then in his turn, I think turn 3 now, obviously he managed to shoot off my other chariot horde. So I have now, the left flank has utterly collapsed. All of my threat is gone. I've just got this kind of strong horde with a lot of nerve, really good against shooting, but it's not very punchy. And basically, if he manages to get his Seaguard into him, I've got a problem. You can see he's kind of just creeping his Shamblers over here to just kind of sit on this token. And as predicted, this dragon shot behind my units. Now up to 5 points of damage on my dragon from the constant blizzarding that he's taking. And what's that? Oh yeah, so then he shot my Dark Knights. These are the Brew of Strength Dark Knights with his Chariot. His Noble on a Chariot. 2 points of damage, but then he boxcarded it. So these are his nerve dice. So he's wavered my Dark Knights, which is rude. Maybe you shouldn't. So I turn them to face this dragon, and then and then you'll see what I've done. So, where's my dragon? Where's the other Dark Knights? You'll see shortly. So I turned these guys to face because they couldn't really do anything else. I didn't really want to get dragoned in the back, and I turned my priestess around to do some fireball. And this dragon, I decided, I can't leave this flank undefended, so I shot this dragon over here to start trying to chip some damage away. Obviously, on the counter charge, the Therannian Seaguard obliterated my gargoyles, but they did their job for that one turn, which is what I needed. And now what I needed was to get some damage onto this archer horde to get rid of them, because they're really the very prescient threat on this side. And this is where we went, because Stefan made a bit of a mistake, which is leaving his Dracons within charge range of both my Dark Knights and the dragon. So we multi-charged into these already a little bit damaged from lightning bolts Dracon horde. And That's right. So the lightning bolt from my other dragon did manage to waver his archer horde. So this game is kind of going back and forwards. It's getting quite exciting at this point. So I've wavered his archer horde, therefore reducing their threat for at least one turn. And yay! So Dark Knights and Dragon did manage to kill the Dracons, which is a huge threat removed. I'm really, really pleased about that. It worked very well. Unfortunately, he has now got... So this is the Diadem guy. There's the... War Engine, and he's got his Chariot over there as well. So, oh, that's the Blizzard guy. So he's got a lot of firepower over here, but nothing that can really punch. Lots that can shoot. So that's where the dragon just faced this way. So what he's done, he shot everything basically outside of line of sights. But this is kind of a lot of shooting. So these Shamblers are obviously going to go over and try and contest the objective. But he's got Blizzard, arrows. That's the War Engine, and this is his dragon, which he chose not to charge into my unit, not to use his dragon in the front, but instead to use him for his fireball, I guess, thinking 15 attacks versus 10. Anyway, so they're trying to just do as much damage onto my dragon as possible. So over here, he's moved the Seaguard over and the archers back to try and give them a little bit of protection. But again, a second mistake, and this was really fortunate for me. So he moved these guys up to basically try and shoot everything he could onto my dragon. But you can see from this line of sight marker, he forgot to turn the War Engine after he moved it. So he couldn't shoot 15 breath onto my dragon. So he took me up to 7 damage, but it wasn't enough to do anything. And to be honest, that 15 breath might have made a difference. Oh, in fact, it went from 7 to 10 damage. So it would have made quite a significant difference. But not enough. So, round back here. So my Dark Knights, who have recovered from their pointless waver, and the Sorceress just kind of dips her toe into the forest so she can fireball the dragon, and we move up to threaten this objective. You can see how much time here. At this point, Steph's got 10 minutes left, and I've got 27. So he spent a lot of time positioning things, which was really counting against him. So the lightning bolts then that I could unleash took off his archer horde, which I was extremely grateful for. Yay! And we got... Oh, so the fireball then put his dragon up to 8 points of damage. And there's... I think it's just a photo of the units looking nice, if I'm honest. This is obviously it's a Shambler conversion to be a Forest Warden. Don't you think that's cool? I think that's cool. What am I showing you here? We moved. Everything moved. I don't know. Maybe I killed something. It's possible. Everything seems to be alive, so maybe not. So, my dragon moved over. His dragon moved up to continue fireballing me. And these Dark Knights, so rather than take all of the attacks from his remaining breath weapons, I shoved around the back of a house to just try and maintain my points. And unsurprisingly, a fireball from the Diadem and a fireball from the dragon unfortunately managed to kill off this dragon. So he'd done his job, he got rid of the archer horde, but then he took a bunch of flames up the arse and died. One dragon down. And then Unstoppable Force meets Immovable Object. So charging into Dark Knights here from his Shamblers, 4 points damage. Not enough. And there's my little priestess. I think Bane chanted them. We'll see. So then I turned my dragon here to try. I really wanted to get rid of this dragon. He's already on 8 points of damage. I should be able to get rid of him, but I've only got 5 lightning bolt. It's not really enough. And this is a situation on the left flank whereby he's shooting stuff off with this horde of Seaguard, and I can't really engage with the Scarecrows because they're just not strong enough, and he will wipe them out in a counter charge. That's that situation on the left flank. And the counter charge from my Knights, you'll notice 4 minutes left now versus 15. Counter charge from my Dark Knights did manage to wipe out the Shamblers despite having the Forest Warden. And actually Forest Warden plus Shamblers is 2 unit strength versus my unit strength. So on this objective now I've got dominance, so this objective is mine. I don't know where my damage has gone, by the way, but it was definitely still there. And so he flew his dragon over here. Right, so this is up to turn 6 now. He's flown his dragon over here to claim this objective. My horde here can claim this objective. His horde can claim this objective. And my dragon is going to fly over and claim this objective. So basically he needs to kill this dragon on turn 6. Which he doesn't. So he puts 3 points of damage from a breath onto my Scarecrows, which is not surprising. And the arrows from this guy, and I think, was it Diadem from this guy? I'm not sure, but it took this dragon up to 7 points, but didn't manage to kill it. Likewise, the breath attack from the War Engine over here took my knights up to 4. And wavered them, which is fine, because they're not actually doing anything at that point. There's the damage to jump back, but that's kind of the end of this situation here, is that I can't charge his Forest Warden, but I can like chuck fireballs or whatever. And then I hopped my dragon over here, on the left hand side basically, so that I'm outside of charge range here. If there's a turn 7, he can't charge me, but then he can turn and shoot me. And that's going to be bad. I've got 7 points of damage. I think I'm a 17, 19. So with all of the shooting he's got here, he's got a Chariot, he's got Diadem, he's got his dragon, and he's got his archers. All of that damage would theoretically wipe out this dragon. So if you look at this situation, his Shamblers have moved up here, but it's not enough. So I've claimed this objective because I've got a Horde. He's claimed this objective with his Horde, only 1 point of damage on them. His dragon has claimed this objective, and my dragon has claimed that objective. So that is 1, 2 to him, and 1, 2, plus the 1 that my knights are over on the right hand side, 3 to me. However, if we get a turn 7, he's basically going to unleash hell on my dragon, and then he'll be able to, what will he be able to do? He'll bring it to a draw. I don't think he'll be able to get any unit strength onto it. There's my one on the right hand side. Yeah! Oh, spoiler warning. You see at the end, so reach turn 6, 1 minute left on the clock that he'd reserved for turn 7 to try and pull that draw out. But there was no turn 7, so it ended up a very close 3-2 victory to me, which I was exceedingly pleased about. So I'd had 3 victories in a row, but this one was really close, and he'd actually ended up killing more. So we weren't using, we were just using the traditional kind of scoring from the book for this one. So you got points 15, 10, 5, for win, draw, loss, and attrition points. And so the difference in attrition counted to a plus or minus. So I went down to 14 and he went up to 6. It was a 14-6 victory. However, there was another player who'd had 3 slightly more successful victories who claimed first place, so I came second. That's my little certificate. There you go. Second! By 1 point, which was fine. I'm really pleased with it. And I was mostly, that last game was fantastic and a really, really close one. Good use of dragons, not so great use of dragons from me, but a couple of kind of telling mistakes kind of allowed me to take advantage right at the end. It was one of those 50-50 ones. Turn 7 he would have won, or would he have won? I'm trying to think. I think it might have been a draw. Because his guy on the Chariot is an individual, isn't it an individual? That's what it boils down to, isn't it? So I think the Chariot guy could have jumped on the objective. Maybe. I don't know. Let's have a look at what Elves do. Noble War Chariot is a hero large cavalry. Yeah, no, so he could have jumped his Chariot onto it on that last turn. And claimed it. So if turn 7 he would have won, but there was no turn 7. So I won. Hurrah! So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a bit of a slightly wandering race through a tournament very quickly, as quickly as I can, because people don't like these videos to go on for too long. Neither do I. It was a really good experience. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the next tournament, and keep looking out for some tournament coverage. There should be some interesting things happening very soon. I'm going to try and get back to some normal battle reports pretty soon with a bit more video content, so I look forward to that. Yeah, but see you next time on Death by Dragons.